And welcome to the Band of Gamers podcast. This is episode 86.5, if we keep going with that number, but this is our newscast podcast, or whatever catchy tune we're going to call it, for the week. Again, the point of this is, because you can never get enough of us, our point is to come, twice a week, give you some quick hits in terms of the news, and it is Thursday evening. May the 4th be with you, as some of our cheesy. Oh, look at it. And Prime is wearing his own shirt to honor that as well. But we're going to dive right into the news this week. We've got some stories, we've got some trickles of things, and we've got an earnings call to start off with. So it may not be EA and Star Wars, but we are talking about another big publisher with Activision. Activision Blizzard had their earnings call today, May the 4th, and so this is fresh news, at least from those that are willing to dig through some financial reports or the 9-page flashy PowerPoint that they released as well. So I'm going to go into just a few pieces here in the earnings call and talk about they highlighted, right, they always come out with some nice flashy graphics, and in years past they've talked about their big brands, and Activision, for what's left of their big brands, it is 3 titles, and they are only showing 3 brand logos on those titles. It is Call of Duty, Destiny, and Skylanders. And again, if you remember that Skylanders is not coming out in 2017. There is not a console version of Skylanders that's coming out. It will only be a mobile version. So that is there. They don't really address it in their earnings call for this quarter. But what they do address is they talk about some of their potential earnings opportunities, right? What is coming down the pipeline for them? They talk about a big release of Call of Duty going back to its traditional roots. We know about that. They talk about Destiny. They provide that both of those titles have strong pre-order numbers already. But one of the things they do talk about, and they cite as one of their big earnings opportunities, are esports. And they specifically cite the Overwatch League that is scheduled to launch this fall, that came out of BlizzCon last year, and that King, the mobile developer of Candy Crush, which Activision bought. King has now been under the Activision kind of banner and portfolio for over a year. A year ago at this time, they had just come on and had only a couple of weeks, within about 5 weeks of the quarter, that they were part of that. So as we look at kind of what revenues look like for Activision, Blizzard, and King, that'll be something to keep in mind. And to me, that was the most interesting part, right? I kind of skimmed through the flashy graphics relatively quickly, and actually it was on page 13 and 11 of the financial report that I found the most interesting pieces, and that's what I want to toss out to you guys as something to think about and what this means. So 2 big pieces here that I saw that they're interesting. Obviously, I mean, not obviously, but they were up overall. Numbers were up, and that was good. But console revenue was down 20%. PC revenue was up 42%. This is year over year. Mobile revenue, and again, in part because King was not in their portfolio for the full quarter, is up 95%, which is a huge number. But I think the secondary piece of that is mobile revenue now accounts for 28% of all of Activision Blizzard's revenue. And if you break it down into Activision, Blizzard, and King in terms of the 3 different segments of that company, that Activision's revenue is only 19% of the total revenue of those 3 entities. That's down 40% from the year before. Blizzard's revenue source, they make up 39% of the revenue for the company, which is up 50% year over year. And King now makes up 42% of the total revenue from Activision Blizzard. And so I guess as I stop talking and kick it over to you guys, does this tell us anything about the direction of Activision and Blizzard in terms of the company? That, is this the leaning into the mobile market, or the realization that Activision's console kind of IP portfolio is as thin as it's ever been? So, thoughts on this, gentlemen, before we kind of kick over to our next news story?
Well, I know Call of Duty as of late, while it still sells pretty well, like year over year, or throughout the years, you can see the numbers are going down. So, and I know, especially this year, and I think like tail end of last year, not just Call of Duty, but all their games are they're kind of jumping over to the PC a little bit more than they used to be. For a few years there, it was like console, and now they're starting to like reverse, or maybe not reverse, but they're just slowly starting to turn back around to the PC again. Obviously, Overwatch was huge on the PC, pretty popular on console too, but I think it was bigger on PC more than anything. Um, you got Hearthstone and games like that. So I think they're I don't know, maybe if it's just kind of I don't want to say lackluster, because obviously the consoles are selling better than their counterparts from the PS3 and 360 era, but it just kind of seems like people are starting to move over to the PC side maybe a little bit more. Zeus, what do you
Yeah.
think?
So I think it's kind of representative of, to me, it's representative of a very weak portfolio on Activision's part, really. As I look at it, and I was kind of thinking while DB was talking, like there's really nothing going for them on console except Call of Duty, and I guess over time they've just allowed themselves to work themselves into this position by constantly hammering out those annual releases. Like, I was looking at their studios while you guys were talking, and it's basically Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer, and Treyarch. They have Vicarious Visions also. Those are the guys who are going to be working on Skylanders and are going to be doing some backup work on Destiny 2. But other than that, the most interesting development studio really in their stable is Raven, and they have essentially kind of ground Raven into the dust and just made them a backup Call of Duty studio to work multiplayer and assets on that franchise. And that's really a shame, because Raven has such a rich legacy and history, especially from being this kind of mid-generation development studio that kind of stovepiped up in between all the big dev studios, like in the early 2000s, with things like Soldier of Fortune, and some other kind of unique games that were their bailiwick, like the Star Trek Voyager first-person shooter. So it's kind of a shame that they've whittled themselves down to just that focus. I guess they also have Radical Entertainment, but the last kind of decent thing they did, and that's arguable, was Prototype 2 and Prototype, and I don't even really know what that studio is working on right now. So it's kind of a shame that they've allowed their own herd to thin out that much.
Yeah, and I think that, to me, I was thinking about this when I was reading the numbers today. The fact that Activision is now only 19% of that total, revenue source is very much an example of the fact that portfolio is so thin, right? That they've taken whatever third-party studios or first-party studios that they had under their wing and have kind of funneled them into their franchises. That everything has been doing either Call of Duty maps, as Raven has, right on the week before Prey comes out, we're talking about Raven just generating multiplayer maps, and Vicarious Visions is doing some Destiny conversions. So I think that is, and even on their kind of PowerPoint aspects about their brands, their big piece, they need to rebuild that brand for Call of Duty in terms of its weak sales. And one of the things they mentioned was the Black Ops Zombie Chronicles that's coming out, of kind of a compilation of zombie modes. So that's something that they're going to be shipping relatively soon. They said in May, but something that can't ship soon enough are more Switch consoles, Zeus. So what do you have in terms of some news about Nintendo Switch?
Yeah, so this story dropped early in the morning on Monday morning over on Kotaku was where I saw it. It was a report that Nintendo shipped Switch consoles by airplane to meet demand as soon as possible. So this is pretty unusual in the electronics industry, as maybe some people know or would understand that the vast majority of all freight, as far as shipments of electronics coming from overseas, travel by sea. when you look at other financial reports, the shipping industry and the amount of fuel that it consumes is really the thing that makes the world go round, if you want to kind of think about it that way. But 2 million Switch units were sold. Well, the original plan was to ship 2 million Switch units at launch. They actually shipped closer to 3 million. The number most recently quoted stands at 2.74. The increased cost per unit is about $45 to ship it by air versus by sea. So my guess is that somewhere in the range of that 0.74, so 740,000 to maybe as many as 1 million units were shipped by air, kind of at the 11th hour to get them into stores and to meet kind of this groundswell of demand that they either saw or predicted was coming based on pre-orders and the demand. So there we go. I don't really know that there's a lot of commentary or analysis that we have on that, but I will kick it back over to you, DBQ.
No, I think the one thing that I saw on that story is that they were talking about potentially, right, $45 that they were taking a loss on per console. So that's, a good sign in terms of demand, and another one of those examples of not necessarily kind of believing the rumors of artificial demand that Nintendo creates around some of their consoles. So one of the other Nintendo news stories that you had was also about sales. Since we've talked a lot about kind of numbers and crunching some numbers tonight, what do you have for Mario Kart? On Monday Night Show, I talked about playing Mario Kart, but you've got some good news in terms of its sales.
Yeah, and one thing I'll mention on the shipping the Switch by air at the last minute, so that probably ate a little bit into their profit margin. But since the Wii days, Nintendo has been really good about getting that manufacturing cost per unit down very earlier in the console life cycle than has typically been the norm. Normally, manufacturing companies tend to take a loss on the consoles for at least the first year of the life cycle. And it's maybe in the second year, if they're fortunate, they turn the corner and start turning a profit on hardware sales. Nintendo, since the Wii, has started turning that profit in the first year, if not immediately. So they're probably taking some hit, but this is predominantly built on the NVIDIA Shield hardware that was already manufactured 2 years ago. So they probably got a pretty good lead in that $45. Maybe doesn't hurt that much for those 740,000 units. And they will make it up if they continue to charge ahead and try and ship up to 10 million. So on sales, to further bolster their financials, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tips into the #1 spot for the first time in 6 years. Now, this is on the UK charts, which fans who have been following the show know that I like to look at the UK charts because their metrics come out earlier than the NPD metrics for a given reporting period, and they are a pretty strong indicator of what NPD is going to say about sales in North America. So right now, reported by MCV, and this came out Tuesday of this week, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was in the top. It is only shipping for the Switch. Unlike Zelda, when you see those sales numbers, obviously that included the Switch and the Wii and the Wii U, but Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is in the top. There are some differences over there in Europe, as Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 is #2. I'm not sure if that title will be that high in North America. Legend of Zelda was also in the top, pulling in at #5. Lego Worlds, we talked about that on a show earlier this month, or earlier in April, was at #6. Ghost Recon Wildlands at 7. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare in at 8, and Horizon Zero Dawn, my likely purchase for my game tomorrow, slipped in at #10. So great news for Mario Kart 8. DB, do you think that positioning is justified given your recent playtime with the title?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a solid title. It's great. I think one of the big pieces of it is that it was a solid title on the Wii U, but the sales of the Wii U were not nearly as strong as what even those initial sales numbers for the Switch have been. So the fact that it's going to get more people out there playing it, I think there's a number of it'll be really interesting to see how Nintendo positions that, right? Between the kind of remasters and re-releases of Wii U games and then some actual new ones, they should be able to create a steady lineup for those people who are looking for consoles. So one of the things that I was looking for last fall was a Titanfall mobile game, because when I bought Titanfall, there was a pack-in with it that said coming soon, but that game was canceled. But this week, Prime, I know that you and I have played some Titanfall together, Titanfall 2 together,
Yep.
and there's a new Titanfall mobile game coming. Is that right? What's the scoop there?
Yeah, so they just announced that they're going to be bringing out Titanfall Assault, which is actually going to be a mobile RTS game. Excuse me. So basically what you'll do is you'll have players join the Frontier War, and then you're going to pick your team of pilots and Titans, and you're going to go against the enemy. It didn't really say, and I don't know if they even know, if you can pick sides. So there's two different sides, which I can't remember right now. I can't remember what they're called. I don't know if you remember, DB, that warring factions or not.
Yeah, I remember. I mean,
It
in the
escapes
original.
me.
Yeah. Nope. Go ahead.
But yeah, so they have player versus player gameplay so far is what they're announced across multiple maps, different maps that you can be able to use. They haven't said if there's going to be a single player campaign or not. Who knows? It's RTS, so I mean, they have been single player campaigns before, but I don't know if those. Personally, I never thought they were very exciting, even in Red Alert days, and I love Red Alert more so for the multiplayer than just going through the single player campaign. I mean, it was fine. Kind of seemed more of a tutorial for me when you're going through to go play against actual people. So, but yeah, and they haven't really had a release date yet. There is a beta sign up or a pre-register for the game on their website right now. I think it's maybe not even a beta. I guess it's just a pre-registration, I guess, to get the game. So, and they haven't announced any platforms. I'm assuming probably iOS and Android, I would figure. So there's that. So are you excited about that? Or it's RTS is something different because the other one was a card game, I believe.
Yeah, the other one was going to be a card battle type of game. I think that the Titanfall world is a really interesting universe and kind of mythos that they've created around it, and so there's certainly plenty there to dive into. I think I'm trying to remember the factions, right? But you had the colonial faction and the independent alliance of planets or whatever, right? It's Halo, it's Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. It's the idea of a strong central government against the free independent outer rim planets. So
yeah, the little guys.
Yeah, right. So since we're talking about a strong central government, Prime, you had another story about a congressional caucus in terms, and I say this with hesitation because I don't know anything about this. So, I mean, I know about congressional caucuses, right? It's a group of legislatures coming together, but they're coming together over video games?
Yes, over something actually I talked about last week that I finally was able to try out was VR. Like I mentioned in the last show, I had actually got a hold of the Samsung VR Gear. I was playing with that a little bit over the past week or so, week and a half. But yeah, this news just came out. I just saw it today. There is a 5-member group from the U.S. House of Representatives forming the Congressional Caucus on Virtual, Augmented, and Mixed Reality Technologies for the 115th Congress, which I'm not sure what that last part is, but basically they are going to...
Hold on, wait. The 150th Congress is just the number of the year of the Congress, right? That's a 2-year term for everybody in a civics government lesson here. Let's not let Prime fail here. It is just a matter of the 2-year term that Congress happens.
Okay.
Anyhow, now back to our regular broadcast.
Now that we have that lesson gone. So yeah, they are going. They're basically advocates for virtual reality, augmented reality. They're basically going to show the rest of the Congress and a House and everything like that. Telling them that this is a good technology. This is not something that's just a flash in the pan kind of a thing. They want to try to educate basically the rest of the Congress on these kind of technologies and not hinder these things, as it says in the article. So I guess that's nice for once.
So is this like a Senator Lieberman, like former Senator Lieberman, like preemptive strike, or is this? I mean, and does it include all representatives like below the age of 40, or is this a bunch of yet another set of bumbling, stumbling people on the Hill who don't understand technology, starting to intervene in a space that they should better leave to their staffers than get involved in themselves?
So for right now, there's only five people from both Democrat and Republican parties So I guess that's good. And there's both parties. And there's only, let's see, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 states that are in it right now: Washington, Texas, New York, and California, and just various representatives from those states.
So
So
I'm sorry, what were the states again? Washington, Texas, California,
New York, and New York.
Yeah.
Did you say there were 5 or just 4?
I'm sorry, 4. There's 5 people in the caucus, 4
Okay.
states. Yeah.
So I can see that. So you'd have a state that has Microsoft embedded in it. You have California, which has everyone embedded in it. You have Texas with their technology center of Austin being involved, and then New York. So if anybody, if any states would have their stuff together in that aspect, hopefully it would be those 4 states.
Yeah, and they named the representatives here. I'm not sure of their age. I don't know, so I can't answer the age question.
Yeah, so I think that is there are a number of. If this was a Senate, I would probably tend to agree with you, Zeus, that it's a little more in terms of probably starting to investigate something out of suspicion versus people thinking about it either in terms of industry or interest. And given those states, you're exactly right that there's probably some good industry ties there, and why they're looking at this as a developing market. I want to kick over to a couple more news stories before we wrap it up at our 30-minute mark. So earlier this week, there was Amazon, speaking of another tech industry, or at least a big tech company, a powerhouse up in Washington. It's not even that really good of a segue, I'm sorry. But Amazon had a leak or a listing of Darksiders 3, which was actually going to be IGN's kind of May 1st game, or first previews. So they had exclusive coverage through May on Darksiders 3, and so this week they've got some hands-on coverage of it. It plays out, sounds like so far, similar to the other Darksiders series. Darksiders 1 it plays out very much like a Zelda game. It's kind of a heavy metal Zelda, and Darksiders 2 follows that, but it also plays out. There's a lot more loot in Darksiders 2, less kind of puzzly, dungeony, and more kind of loot grindy there. So in Darksiders 1, you played as War. In Darksiders 2, you played as Death, and in Darksiders 3, you're playing as Fury, which is one of the 4 horsemen in the Darksiders universe. So not Pestilence or Famine, but Fury. And so she is a female character. It's kind of in the similar style. It sounds like kind of a God of War kind of actiony character action game. I, for one, really enjoyed the Darksiders games. Zeus, did you play them? Is that something, I don't know if that's a game series that you ever got into?
I played a little bit of the first one, and I still have it, and it's always eligible for revisiting. And just because it was free, I'm pretty sure on PlayStation Plus. So I haven't played as much of it, but I guess what I find more interesting is or find significant about it is it's just kind of place in recent gaming history, which THQ was one of my favorite publishers, and it came from a development studio. I think.
Nordic Games up. Yep.
But the original development studio was like Vigil or Vigilance or
yes, it was Vigil. Yep.
Yeah. So like I said, THQ was one of my favorite publishers. I unfortunately kind of had to sit through and watch their demise. And this there was a big auction. We've talked about that a few times because it periodically comes up. And Darksiders kind of went into IP limbo. I mean, somebody held it, but the studio wasn't aware that somebody had picked up the license, so they all disbanded. Lots of them went to work for Crytek. Some of them just went off to different industries. Eventually, Nordic rebranded themselves as THQ Nordic because their own publisher name didn't really have a lot of cash with the public. So since rebranded, and then they, I guess, kind of revealed or made better known that they had the Darksiders license. I think they actually did a remaster of that IP of Darksiders 1 and 2, and I think sold it as a package or something.
Actually, the package deal is new. They're calling it kind of like the Fury pack to highlight Darksiders 3. But yes, there was a Darksiders 2 remaster, I think even 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And then this past fall, they did an original Darksiders remaster on all modern consoles.
Yeah. So since then, they have gotten a hold of all those expats from Vigil. I'm not sure if I think they combined under a new studio, which I can't remember what they're called, Gravity something or other, maybe. I think DBQ is fact checking that now.
I am fact checking right now. I think it's Gaslight Games, right?
Yes. Yep. And so the band has gotten back together, and they're rolling out Darksiders 3. So it's a really in the wake of now. Here's another thing to fact check. I can't remember the name of the studio that was kind of owned by the state of Rhode Island. Was started up by the baseball player.
Yes, and it also, what is it? I'm not remember. It had the same studio of Rise of Nations, right? It was the. Anyhow, let's move on. I'll fact check.
Okay, so when you see studios fall like that, it's nice to see this good news story of a studio being reassembled and reconstituted. And so to round out with what will hopefully be good news for gamers, also talking about Amazon news. So they leaked it, and now they're selling it. Not quite selling the exact same thing, but they do have a sale going on this weekend. They have a AAA sale on for games on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, where they have things marked down up to 83% off. So newer games aren't marked down that much. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is only down to $40. Mass Effect Andromeda is down to $40. Nier Automata is down at $45. But there are some nice cherry picks in here. Titanfall 2 is on sale for $22, both on PS4 and Xbox One. Watch Dogs 2 is available for $30. It's a nice chance to check that game out, although I would say if you have neither gotten Watch Dogs 2 or Titanfall 2, Titanfall 2 is probably the better deal. Mafia 3 is available for $30. I would definitely say check out Deus Ex Mankind Divided, available for $10.12 on Xbox One, if you haven't checked that. Gears of War 4 is $24.99. The thing that I'm curious about there is I don't know if you get the cross-buy if you buy it from Amazon. I'm not sure exactly how that works, so you may want to check that out and verify that you
I think as long as it's digital, it comes with the cross-buy. So
okay. Yeah, that would be interesting to know for certain. Halo 5 is also available for $27. Halo Wars 2, wow, the Ultimate Edition, okay, is $50, and the regular Halo Wars 2 is $37.50. So there are some nice picks in here. Not all of them are at great prices, but there are some choices to pick up at really low cost. Such as Star Wars Battlefront Ultimate Edition is available for $20. I believe that $20 comes with the season pass, and there may not be any new DLC coming for Battlefront, but you would certainly have access to everything that has been released to date. Even though, admittedly, some of that might be free anyway, but still not a bad price at $20.
No, right? That $20 price on Battlefront is all the DLC, and if you're on a PlayStation, it's also the VR missions, and so that, or at least mission, right? And that is mirrored. Those sales, many of those sales are mirrored on both platform stores this week as well, where Capcom and Star Wars have sales going on the PlayStation Store and the Xbox Marketplace as well. Prime, we didn't get to your final news story, but I want to, before we hit our 30-minute mark, do you have any final thoughts or questions to send us out with?
Yeah, I just had for the sale, is this physical copies or digital, or because they do sell digital copies now, don't they, on Amazon? Do you know?
I'll check it now. You guys keep chatting it up.
Okay, and then so, 38 Studios, was that the
yes, the lawsuit, Rhode Island. Yeah. Yep. Yes, the former baseball player and that as well.
That's Kurt Schilling, right?
Yes, yeah. It is Kurt Schilling Studio. Yep, it was 38 Studios. Big, what was it? Big Huge Games was the other. That was the Rise of Nations studio that was tied in with it as well. But 38 was the Rhode Island one. So, and yes, sometimes it is. Amazon does match digital prices on things. I've seen that in the last couple of months where the PlayStation Network has had sales and Amazon will match them digitally. But Zeux, if you have some details, if that is physical.
It looks like physical. So I followed the link to the Titanfall 2 sale, and it's the physical version that came up showing a shipping time of, on Titanfall 2 it says it actually may take an extra 1 to 2 days to ship, and there is no pull down thing to shift it to digital from this page.
Yeah,
so it looks like for the looks like for the sales price it is specifically the physical copies.
All right. So
Cool.
that gives these people something to do for the end of this week and heading into their weekend in terms of picking up some extra games. We are at our mark. So any final thoughts, any ascending remarks as we head people off into the weekend? Prime?
Nope, nothing for me today.
All right. Zeus?
Nothing for me. I'm going to go play some Burnout Paradise on the PlayStation 3.
Aha. Well, enjoy, and I hope everyone listening has a chance to enjoy whatever they're playing or getting around to playing this weekend as well. And remember, we are going to be here on YouTube, but we'll also be posted up on Gearworks, where you'll have the option of both the video and the SoundCloud audio files to take us with you. If you're traveling this weekend or you just need something to listen to while you're grinding out some alternative to your Guns N' Roses Paradise City soundtrack for Burnout Paradise. So
Taking it old school there.
there we go. All right. Well, until Monday night, we will see you all back here for our regular show about what we've been playing and a topic of the week. And until then, peace.